Welcome to the Language Fuel podcast. Our mission is to fuel the teaching and learning of languages worldwide. I'm your host, Joanna Smith. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Language Fuel podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you find some value in today's episode. We're up to episode number 31. If you haven't heard our previous episodes, feel free to go back and have a look. languagefuel.com/podcast, and of course you'll see all the episodes there as you scroll down. The show notes are in each episode. You can click on it to take to its own web page, and you'll see the notes and so on. Some of them have downloadables to help you remember the content and so on. If you haven't subscribed, you can do that on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever podcast program you normally use on your phone. Anyway, today's topic is about new school year resolutions. And the reason why I'm thinking about this now, as I'm recording this, it's the first week of September. And all over the internet, I'm seeing language teachers going back to school because, of course, it's the beginning of term or academic year for the Northern Hemisphere. Down here in New Zealand, we're halfway through. We're sort of 3/4 of the way through, coming up to our end of our third term out of 4. But I guess the majority of people who are in my Facebook groups and that sort of thing that I'm a part of are in the Northern Hemisphere. And so everybody's talking about back to school this, back to school that. So for the language teachers out there, I thought I would just summarize some of the excellent tips that I've seen go around on the net. And this is just language teachers sharing with language teachers their best advice. So good luck to you guys starting back at school. Here are the top 8 things that I've been reading about and tips from one language teacher to another all over the web. So the first one was somebody suggesting when they started their first term of teaching, she couldn't see how it would ever work. She had an absolute terrible time and she thought she would quit, but she had a eureka moment during her first half-term holiday and came back, and what she says is this: you need to own the space in your classroom, and that includes how you stand, where you stand, and your body language. She says, apparently when you stand in a certain position, legs slightly apart, shoulders back, and arms relax, you generate a certain hormone, and students automatically behave differently when you stand like this. Try it, it works. Stand and wait for them to settle before you speak. Now, if you're hearing that and thinking, there's no way that could work, it's just a position of your body. In fact, what she's referring to, if you want to look up further, is a TED Talk done by a woman called Amy Cuddy on TED, and I will put the link in the notes to this episode of the podcast. The title of her TED Talk is Your Body May Shape Who You Are. So it's a very, very interesting TED Talk. It's 21 minutes long, but definitely worth your time to invest in that. It's had 42 million views so far on the web, so I do definitely highly recommend that. So that's what this teacher is referring to. You can feel more confident and generate confidence in the people who are looking at you. So own that classroom. That's my first tip. Related to that, was a comment that someone else said, keep your head still. As soon as you tip your head, and women tend to do this a lot, it suggests you are happy to negotiate and compromise. Keeping your head still means your students will take you more seriously. So there you go. That's a little bit of body language advice. That was number 1. Number 2 for you is use gestures wherever you can and save your voice at all costs. Don't ever talk when they do or try to talk over them. During these first few precious lessons in September, you have the opportunity to put across what happens in your classroom. Make sure it's exactly the way you want it to be for the rest of your time there. Don't accept second best. So I love that. I love the fact that, you're just being the teacher. You're the one responsible for what happens. You're in charge. Keep it that way. Don't try to compete with students. Let them know that you're the boss. There's a couple of comments that I've picked up related to that. One says, if they come in really noisily, just wait until they're quiet, and then super quietly, like in a whisper, you can invite them to walk outside and try again. And by doing that, you're inviting them to learn that when they come into your classroom, it's quiet and it's orderly. The person who's writing this says, don't be afraid to do this and don't talk while they do it. It works so well. So that's a great piece of advice. And related to that, a couple of other comments that I've seen. One person says, I put my hand up to get them quiet. It really works. So does counting backwards from 3 to 1. And related to that, it's very important to use the school's behavior policy and be consistent with it. She says, I use lots of praise and reward participation with points, which ultimately convert into prizes. Behavior management is an ongoing challenge. None of us gets it right all the time. The key is to persevere and be prepared to try different things. Another teacher related to settling in when people first start in the classroom says, I'm teaching younger ones, but even with my year 7 or 8s, I do this. To make them settle, I write on the whiteboard names of the students who are getting ready. It works like dominoes. I don't have to tell them to get ready. It's very visual and they love to see their names on the board for something positive. So I love that, the fact that it's just positive reinforcement of what's actually working. And the final comment related to that in terms of, settling students down and getting them to work. Another person says, thanks for sharing. This is a timely reminder of how I was taught during my teacher training course. My other mantra is no shushing. When a teacher starts shushing the class, they're just adding to the noise level. Instead, use words, clear, direct instructions in a small voice. And combined with direct body language, which she says includes eye contact, a lack of facial expression, etc., students soon learn exactly what it is that you want. So I love that. So don't be trying to shush, don't try to talk over the students, just let them know really clearly and quietly exactly what's expected of them. And like the first suggestion said, hey, send them out and have another go bringing them back in. So clear boundaries right from the start. So that's my second tip in terms of getting the quiet that you need. Thirdly, this teacher says when dealing one-to-one with children who are worked up, so for example in the hall or maybe during a restorative conversation in detention, so you've got a student who's upset, something's gone wrong and they're not able to be still and concentrate, they're very worked up. She says acknowledge what the child is feeling by naming it and then listen. Just listen. Acknowledge what they've said with a word such as oh or I see, and let the child talk rather than lecturing or asking questions, because the child will often work it out themselves. So many times students act out because of something that happened at home or in the last class or whatever reason. Then they get into trouble and they just feel like everything is piled on and it turns into a massive confrontation. So her suggestion is just listen to them genuinely and allow them to work through it. It's amazing what a difference it can make. So I love that. Just give the child or the student, I guess, if you're teaching older student, the space to work it out. All right, so that was number 3. And related to that is another comment by a teacher which says, always greet them at the door with a cheery smile, a hello and how are you, or how's your day been? Especially to those who look like they're struggling a bit. And the same when they leave. They like to feel cared about. And I love that. Such a simple solution to encourage a really great atmosphere in your class. And I mean, who doesn't want to feel cared for when you've had a bit of a hard day or a couple of things not going your way? So that's wonderful to create a great environment in your class. All right. Suggestion number 4 is tell students what you expect from them and what they can expect from you. That's a great idea to do during lesson 1. And related to that is, again, something we've heard before, is make sure you really understand the school behavior policy and implement straight away from day 1, which is wonderful. In fact, many institutions do have rules that you need to be on top of so that it's a consistent experience for the students. And if everybody's, preaching the same message to the students, then everybody benefits. So that's wonderful. And another comment related to that is a slightly longer one. This teacher says, I totally agree. It's very hard to implement firmness, but I've learned over the years that if you persevere with your rules, they will respect you. Remember, you are the adult and it takes time for them to adjust to a new classroom and new teacher. The person goes on to say, the first year I taught, I thought it's never going to work. Now, when the kids know they have me as their teacher, I won't put up with rudeness. Once I was talking taking a class for a colleague and they saw me walking towards the classroom, one of the kids said, "Can I go now?" as they knew that if you're in my class, you're there to learn and not carry on silly. They have to learn boundaries. I've always been firm but fair. Start right from the very first lesson and don't expect it to work straight away. But if you're consistent, they will eventually settle down. Love that. Love the experience that's coming through that person's comment. Comment number 5. It is the best job in the world, but burnout happens so quickly in the first few weeks if you don't take care of yourself. Time your planning and make sure you sleep. All right, so this is just classic self-care that's being advocated here, and several comments along this line came up after that. So one is, I would add, make sure you include time for leisure, healthy food, and exercise. Nothing will make you feel better than a healthy, fun life outside of school to make you a great and interesting teacher. How true is that? The next comment related to this, if time is short, prioritize planning over marking. You can always mark at the weekend or in front of the TV, but if your lesson isn't planned, it will fall apart and behavior issues will start and have a knock-on effect on everything else. You will get better at this as long as you keep wanting to improve and keep insisting on good behavior, no matter how many times it seems to fail. And then the person finishes the comment by saying, 12 years on, I'm glad I'm still in the game. It's the best job in the world. How awesome is that? The person has clearly nailed some of these wonderful tips that are being shared. So I couldn't agree more. Look after yourself. Be ready. Plan for that lesson. And if you didn't catch our last episode, there is some steps to how to lesson plan. Not example lesson plans, but the process you need to follow as you are planning a lesson. So do go check that out if you need some help with knowing how to plan a lesson. That was episode 30, I believe. All right, the next one is have a seating plan. This person says, don't forget seating plans, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. So, why are seating plans so important? Well, if you put yourself in the shoes of a young student coming into a brand new class, it's actually rather stressful to try to find, where am I going to sit? Do I have a friendly face that I can connect in with to sit next to them and feel confident and feel safe? So A, it relieves stress for a lot of students. B, what you don't want is people sitting with their BFFs and then chatting the whole time in their lesson because they have so much to catch up on because they're best friends. So to just avoid all of that, tell people where to sit, and that way everybody's in the same boat. Everybody is perhaps seated next to someone they don't know too well, and then you can build into your lessons those ice-breaking moments, and then everybody's on the same footing. So totally agree with that, number 6. Number 7, coming next, is remember that all children from 3 to 18 and beyond want to get stickers. If some are behaving noisily, instead of correcting them, just quietly put a sticker on the work of those who are behaving as you want, and then transformation will occur. So again, it's rewarding the good behaviors so that those who are not displaying those behaviors quickly realize they're missing out and they want to join in with that. So I love that. I love that reward mentality. And as we heard earlier, some teachers include sort of points that end up to be prizes. In the Language Fuel Resource Room in New Zealand here, where we're selling textbooks and so on, we have a ton of prizes because that's exactly, what teachers are doing here too. So we've got stickers, we've got pencils, we've got pens, bookmarks, little wristbands, little rings and that sort of thing that are all related, branded in the language and so on. So that's really great to have a stock of that in your classroom ready to go. And finally, the final comment, which I thought was a wonderful one to finish off with, is you don't actually need them to like you. This is not about popularity. You just need them to work and learn. If they do like you, that's an added bonus. I love that because the job of a teacher is to create an environment where students are learning. It actually does not matter whether or not they like the teacher. So if you feel like, oh, but if I'm going to be strict, they're not going to be my best friends, it's not about them being your friend. You've got to create a great environment. And I tell you what, if they feel safe, if they feel like they're achieving and learning, if they're being rewarded for good behavior, they will like you anyway. It's a natural consequence. But yeah, that's not the aim of it. So that's it from me today. I will summarize these into a very quick downloadable, and you can just click and we'll email that to you if you give us your email address. Just some really great tips to remember as you start off the new year and establish a wonderful pattern of working. Good luck, everyone in the Northern Hemisphere. We're not where you are, but maybe we'll promote this podcast again come February next year for those of us in the Southern Hemisphere. We're wishing you all the best and enjoy. Ka kite anō. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Language Fuel podcast. You can navigate to the show notes and links via our homepage at www.languagefuel.com. See you next time.